Before we begin our game this evening, we ask that you please stand and remove cover as we honor America with the presentation of colors by the Wekiva High School Air Force Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. The colors are presented tonight by Detail Leader Cadet Colonel Michaela Bertrand carrying the U.S. flag, Cadet Major David Hernandez carrying the state flag, Cadet Major Tanaya Ewing carrying the Air Force flag. And the Rifle Guards are Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Jemiah Corvassier and First Lieutenant Michelle Thomas. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the playing of our national anthem, performed tonight by the Pride of Wekiva, your Mustang Marching Band. Once again, our thanks to the marching band and the JROTC for their participation in tonight's pregame activities. We'll also take this opportunity as our team captains meet at midfield for the coin toss to thank the Central Florida Officials Association and our game officials, referee Al Garza, umpire Jerome Thompson, linesman Alvin Lightsley, line judge Joseph Prather, back judge Rodney Brown, and clock operator CW Bill Smith. We thank them for their dedicated service to our high school athletic programs and join them with our participating schools, reminding everyone to make great sportsmanship a part of this and every athletic competition. And a special welcome to those of you joining us online. My name is Mark Barchi, the voice of the Mustangs, joined as always by Neil Fisher of the Apopka Chief, as we please welcome to the field your Wekiva High School Mustangs. And welcome back to the broadcast, Neil. Sorry, I think you were about to introduce yourself there when you were so rudely interrupted by those pesky football players that we all came to see. But the Mustangs are now coming off of getting back into their groove. They hit an 0-2 skid in the middle of the season. They are now up to a 6-2 record overall, thanks to a homecoming victory in decisive fashion against Forest, and now are pretty well positioned to get a wild card spot in the playoffs. We anticipate that this is going to be another big game for Larry Preston since Brendan Sear is still out for the rest of the season with an injury. We also expect to see a lot more rushing, not only because Preston is more of a rushing quarterback, but because we have Davis back in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, again, if you just joined us, tonight was senior night. As always, a fine job on the broadcast of sending our seniors out on a high note. But as you mentioned, the bottom line tonight for Wekiva is very simple. They win, they're most likely in the playoffs. They don't actually clinch it as far as mathematically, but there's about a 0.5 or 1/2% opportunity for them not to get into the playoffs. They would raise their record to 7-2. And as we get started here, real quick, the wild card seedings are based on what's called rating percentage index. Now, I know these scores don't sound particularly high, but remember the highest RPI is about 0.75. Wekiva has a 0.642. They are fourth in those RPI standings, which means they would have to fall 5 positions in those standings as well as give up 0.102 RPI in order to fail to make the playoffs.
Yeah, so certainly while we don't yet know exactly where the Mustangs are going to land as a wild card, it does seem probable at this point that unless we see something really unexpected, that the Mustangs are well positioned to get one of those coveted wild card spots in a formula that is sort of an extension of what the FHSA experimented with last year. And now they have kind of refined it a little bit. They've extended it to include not only the opponent's records, but also the opponent's records, making the formula a bit more sophisticated and also a bit more difficult to predict this year.
So, Mark, we start off tonight with the playoffs. In general, this is a team that Wekiva should beat. You look at all the statistics, starting with the record. Southlake comes in 3-5. Wekiva, of course, is 6-2. Their 2 lone losses are the teams that are always considered possible to go very, very deep into the playoffs as Dr. Phillips and Edgewater. Southlake has yet to beat. Really, they haven't played anybody of that caliber other than Edgewater, and they got smoked by him. I believe the final score is 56-0, and yet they've only been able to muster 3 wins.
Flag on the play.
So,
prior to the snap, offsides called against the Mustang defense. That's a 5-yard penalty and results in an Eagle first down.
The first down of the game for either team there, Mark. But as I was saying, Southlake comes in at 3-5. They are a very old school team, but before we get into that, this is also actually, despite that record for Southlake, for second place in the district. There's only 4 teams in District 7A3. You have Edgewater, Wekiva, Southlake, and Forest. So that means there's only 3 games, and that's a double-edged sword there. If you're Edgewater and you win all 3 games, you only have to win 3 games. On the other hand, if you're Southlake or Wekiva, you make one mistake, one bungle, like we saw again, Wekiva losing to Edgewater. Well, both these teams losing to Edgewater. You then have to overcome that. You only have 2 opportunities to be able to position yourself for the playoffs instead of the 3.
Wyatt Watson runs for a gain of 2 yards. It'll bring up 2nd and 8 for the Mustangs.
Southlake. Yes. So again, as I wrote in my story this week, although it has happened in the 2 years since Wekiva, or since the FHSAA changed the format, there have been teams that have finished third in the district qualifying for the playoffs, but of course life is much, much more easier if you finish second because you'll have a higher RPI rating.
The pass intended for Giovanni Rivers falls incomplete. That'll bring up 3rd and 8 for the Eagles. Yeah, and Neil, I'll show it on the screen very briefly here, but RPI, which they round off to 6.42, and that's pretty darn good. I'll show you the rest of the region in just a moment.
Got another penalty here.
Flag on the play. Offsides again called against the Mustangs. 5-yard donation to the Eagles cause and a replay of 3rd down.
Yeah, and again, just like I was talking about finishing second in the district as opposed to finishing third, this is more specific, but nonetheless, Wekiva's making life a lot easier for Southlake with those 2 first-down penalties. So again, real quick here, if you've been following college or high school football for more than 20 years, you're going to notice something about Southlake. They look a lot like the East Ridge teams that were dominating high school football in the first decade of the 21st century under Bud O'Hara, and that's because Mark Woolham, their coach, actually was O'Hara's right-hand man during that run of about 12 years. East Ridge, of course, made the playoffs all of those 12 years except for one, and won at least a contest.
The pass is complete to Tyler Ricards at the 37-yard line. Rickards picks up a gain of 6, and it's enough for an Eagle first down.
Who caught the ball?
18.
Who? 18. So as Southlake continues to line up here, first thing you will notice about them in comparison to those East River teams, they run the split back formation, and specifically they run the veer as far as how they attack. It's exclusive. They don't go to anything else. I like to equate that again. If you're my age, you know what I'm talking about. I'm 50 years old. It's like the counter tray that the Washington Redskins ran for about 15 years in the 80s and 90s under Joe Gibbs, where you have three of your linemen. They pull to the one side, and the running back gets the ball and runs to the opposite side.
Devontae Harper runs for 3.5 yards. That brings up 2nd down for the Eagles.
And again, that's the perfect play for the Eagles. Is that 24? 3 yards in a cloud of dust is the perfect play for the Eagles. What they want to do is get 3 yards, set up 3rd and 4 every single time. 3rd and 4 is 3rd and 3, so they can keep running the ball. They don't want to be forced into passing situations. They only want to use the pass to catch the opponent off guard.
Wyatt Wilson on the carry, tackled by Jamel Lynch. That puts the ball at the 33-yard line for a gain of 1.
Is that 24? So again, Southlake is the definition of old school, not only in their formation, but their philosophy and their concept of how they attack the opponent. They like to use that veer formation again, which is pretty much like that counter trade the Redskins ran for years and years, won 3 Super Bowls with Joe Gibbs. But they don't take risks because they don't want to make mistakes. They'll wait out the other teams making the mistakes. And Wekiva, of course, with the 2 offsides, have already done that.
And a lather, rinse, repeat of the previous play. Wyatt Wilson on the carry, Jamel Lynch on the tackle. This time a loss of 1 yard. Takes the ball to the 34-yard line and brings up 4th down.
And, of course, as I just mentioned, when you have that kind of philosophy, you're going to see a lot of close games. Southlake has won 3 games, as we mentioned. 23 points have been given up in those 3 victories. The margin of victory combined is 11 points. And we're going to see them go for it here. A bit of a surprise early
Well, yeah, but that's a long field goal and not a particularly useful punt. So I do understand the play choice.
Right, of course. The logic makes sense, and I was just going to mention, I think Southlake is more of just trying to take a gamble here of pulling Wekiva off sides. But again, just to reemphasize, you get a lot of close games here with Southlake or big blowouts, and this first quarter is going to really dictate if this is going to be a close game or a blowout. In the 3 victories, Southlake has given up only 23 points. Their margin of victory is only 11 points. In the 5 defeats, they've lost by a combined margin of 132.
So the Eagles take their first time out, and we will take a look here at what you had alluded to earlier, Neil, and that is the district standing. So the first way and the preferred way to get into the playoffs is to win your district. And that's done the way that it has been done for years and years and years. And that is simply to have the best district record. Niceville, very likely going to win District 1. Edgewater has locked up District 3. Fleming Island has all but locked up District 2. And Winter Springs kind of the oddball. We know that was a lot of data, so we'll put that graphic up again later so you can study it a little more. Winter Springs kind of an odd story of their playoff journey because they actually have a very low RPI. They would be at risk of not getting in at all if it weren't for the fact that they had a couple of good district games. Here we have a pass complete to Tyler Rickards, and it is enough for the Eagle first down.
Yeah, and again, that goes back really to Southlake is a team you want to shut them out cold in the opening minutes here, and Wekiva's given up 3 first downs. I was going to also mention in this to further allude to what you were saying about Wekiva losing a couple games and getting back, finding their footing again with the victory over Forest last week. This is a team, again, you look at the records, you look at all the stats. Wekiva should be winning. They should come in here and win fairly comfortable. But Wekiva has made a couple of mistakes. Obviously, they gave up. The first down was the direct result of a penalty. The second penalty put Southlake in a 3rd and short position, and they converted that into first down. Now, a long pass about 20 yards. That was a defensive coverage mistake there, one-on-one, and the DB allowed the receiver to get inside. So, again, Wekiva looking to find their footing, and I mention all that because the bottom line is we can talk all about X's and O's and statistics, but Wekiva has a very bad habit of falling behind early. They don't really come out looking like they're prepared, at least maybe the energy's up, but they don't look prepared in the sense of really expecting what the opponent does.
Devontae Harper runs for no gain. It brings up 2nd and 10 from the 17-yard line.
Who was that? 6. And that was mentioned by Bedison. He talked about getting into the playoffs. When I met with him this week, he talked about getting into the playoffs, like I mentioned, the likelihood, and of course Apopka is the next game, so you want to take care of the business of getting into the playoffs against Southlake. And, some good defense there, but of course that was a last-minute knockdown there. You want to talk about he talked about taking care of the business of getting into the playoffs.
The pass intended for Giovanni Rivers, defended by Naheem Kendall, and ultimately dropped. It brings up 3rd and 10 for the Eagles.
But he talked at the top of the list most tangibly, and all of that, the playoffs don't matter. It needs to be put behind them until they take care of falling behind early.
Southlake, of course, is a somewhat new opponent for the Mustangs. I'm having trouble recollecting from the last 13 years that you and I have been covering Wekiva whether they have ever played, whether these two teams have ever played each other prior to this moment.
As we get an incomplete pass here, good DB coverage, forcing the receiver not with much room there. But yeah, Mark, actually, I don't remember exactly what years, but it was about the 5th or 6th year. Southlake moved up to 8A for 2 years.
Pass intended for Serdamian Yutzi falls incomplete out of bounds. That brings up 4th and 10, and the Eagles will bring out the field goal unit.
So a good job here by Wekiva of at least recovering after Southlake moved the ball the majority of the field. And Mark, Well, they're overcoming those mistakes.
The field goal attempt is blocked by Antoine Johnson. And we remain scoreless. That turns the ball over on downs to the Mustangs.
Yeah, Mark, something we've grown accustomed to. Of course, the big block this year was against Sokoe on the last play, preserved a 14-13 victory. But that's the third one. And again, that's exactly what Wekiva needed. They gave up some momentum there. And again, just looked like they just weren't prepared as far as knowing what to expect. And now they have an opportunity to right that ship here with 4.5 minutes left.
Yeah, so with 4:25, Antoine Johnson gets the ball back for Wekiva with no damage done to the score.
Now, of course, Wekiva, in a sense, got a little lucky, dodged a bullet there, being able to come up with the blocked field goal in the big play. But they got to capitalize on that. They got to convert that into some, not only momentum, but tangible of moving the ball down the field.
Chad Davis opens up the drive with a 5-yard run for the Mustangs. He'll get it again here.
Where was the original line of scrimmage? 23. So a perfect start there, 5 yards. And again, as you mentioned at the beginning of this broadcast, during those two losses to Dr. Phillips and Edgewater, Davis was out. He comes back into the lineup, and it was pound and ground last week.
Chad Davis again, this time for 8 yards. It's good for a Mustang. First down.
Now, last week, Wekiva's passing game, which of course has been taken over by Larry Preston, actually outgained the rushing attack, 149 to 128.
Amari Thomas on the carry. Antonio Collins makes the tackle. That puts the ball right back to the 34-yard line for a gain of 1, 2nd and 9.
So the totals were 149 to 128 rushing, but the tone for that game and what Wekiva wanted to do and physically exert itself as we get another rush here was set on that first drive, 55 yards, touchdown, all 55 yards gained on the ground.
Amari Thomas picks up a couple of blocks and gets the ball out past the 40-yard line to the 44, and it's enough for a Mustang first down.
How many yards? 9. So again, all 55 of those yards were gained via the ground. Opening possession last week, and 37 of those 55 were gained by Davis, an average gain of 4.5 yards, 12 plays, and basically the character by which the ball was moved those 50 yards was overwhelmingly damage to the Forest's cause, though. Mustangs executed a methodically flawless repetition of power, while how the rushing game was employed remained simple.
Chad Davis picks up 14 yards on the shuffle pass before being tackled by Troy Shirley.
And the reason I brought that all up, Mark, is because we're seeing deja vu here again. 6 plays in over 30 yards, all on the ground until that pass.
Pass intended for Assad Wasim falls incomplete. It brings up 2nd and 10 for the Mustangs in Eagle territory at the 43-yard line.
So again, last week they set the tone with the rushing and Davis being the specific player returning to the lineup. We just saw that again here tonight. As I mentioned, they got to turn that blocked field goal into tangible results.
Look at the hole here. Chad Davis, got snagged by the shoulder. Almost got a horse collar call there, but Chad Davis punches through the middle of the defensive line, finally taken down by Troy Shirley, who saves the touchdown, but it's more than enough for a Mustang first down.
Was that 20? How many yards?
20. Those are the 12.
That's 31.
Yes. Who is that? 81? Or was that Thomas, 34?
I'm sorry.
Amari Thomas into the end zone for a Mustang touchdown. Extra point by Brian Wilson is good, and the Mustangs are up 7-0 with 1:31 remaining in the first quarter.
So, Mark, again, I know I spent that whole possession there, that drive, talking about it, and I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but it's so important to explain how important it is for Wekiva to get off to that good start, and that was as perfect as it gets. Again, deja vu, just like last week. When they get the ball back, look for them to open up the ball some more, or pass the ball some more. Now that they pound and ground, that was 77 yards. 8 plays, and again, 7 of the 8 were rushing. Davis took 5 of them. Thomas took the other 2, including the touchdown run. But from the very beginning, they started with a 5-yard run, and that really set the tone there. And now, of course, as we mentioned many times, this is just in general, in any sport, life is always a lot easier when you're playing from ahead as opposed to behind.
The kickoff rolls out of bounds. That is, of course, a penalty, and so the Eagles will start at the 35-yard line.
But also, Wekiva is a team that plays much, much better when they're playing from ahead, because they can then get their option of not only rushing, but they can get the right kind of rush.
Wyatt Wilson on the carry, gain of 1, 2nd and 9.
Wilson's 24.
Yep.
Of course, Wekiva plays a 3-4 defense. They've been playing that since Coach Bedison got here 4 years ago. And now, like I mentioned, this is a critical possession for Southlake, even though we're not even done with the first half. They are a team that usually, if they can stay around in the first quarter, they will give themselves a shot at winning. Their 5 losses, they were all behind, and significantly behind by the end of the first quarter.
Troy Shirley on the QB keep for 1 yard. That'll bring up 3rd and 8.
What's his number?
10.
7?
10.
10. And now those last 2 plays pretty much is what we've become accustomed to for the defense. As we get to the end of the first quarter here, in the first 3rd down conversion attempt of the ball game, we'll be facing Southlake. Huh?
Yes, it was 34 times.
Oh, on the TV.
That takes us to the end of the first quarter. The Mustangs lead 7-0 at the end of the opening 12 minutes. And here comes the rain. So, Neil, as we take a look again at this board, you see that Edgewater. So first you take the number 1 from each of the 4 districts. So that'll be Niceville, Fleming Island, Edgewater, Winter Springs. Those become your number 1, 2, 3, and 4 seeds in the playoffs.
Yeah, the reward for winning a district. Is
right, even if they may not be the highest 4 seeded overall, those become your number 1, 2, 3, and 4 seeds. The pass intended for Wyatt Wilson is batted down by the Mustangs. And that'll bring up 4th and 8.
So that's the possession exactly Wekiva needed there, 3 and out. Now they can come back onto the field and, like I mentioned, go back to the ground and pound with Davis and Thomas, but probably see a little bit more passing. But at this point, Wekiva's taking the lead. There's no reason for them to get out of character. There's no urgency. Again, a lot of the Wekiva's, efficiency is, as I like to say, if the opponent doesn't have the ball, the opponent can't score.
Good run for Coleman. He's got some yardage.
Oh, yes. Great run there, man. Went to the left. And again, that play started with the decision being made as soon as he caught the ball. Saw the alley and didn't wait. Hit that lane right away and saw that and waited for his blocks to develop there. Again, great anticipation and waiting for those blocks. It was about the 30, is that the 35? Yeah, the 35.
Jamon Coleman picks up the ball at the 35-yard line, runs it all the way back into Eagle territory, down to the 28-yard line.
So another golden opportunity here. Actually, the first golden opportunity.
Yeah, that was actually a -9 net yardage play. They would have been better off to go for it on 4th down and lose.
Yeah, and Wekiva's first possession there, that touchdown, was a self-created one. They actually got the ball and deep in their own territory at the 23. This one, Wekiva's taking over at Southlake's 23. So the end result, though, is we can be looking at a 14-0 deficit for Southlake.
The pass is in and out of the hands of Fletcher Charles, 2nd and 10.
So that is a play there. Again, like I mentioned, now that they got the rushing game, they've established the rushing game. Look for more passes, and there on 1st down, it's a you got nothing to lose pass. And now again, you can see they're going back to the pound and ground, and we saw what happened there. Fumble. They were looking very good, and those are the mistakes that Bennison's talking about. Again, that's a very obvious mistake, but that's a momentum killer.
Chad Davis on the carry, getting down to about the 14-yard line, which would have been a gain of 14 yards, but then the ball is fumbled and picked up by the Eagles. So they'll start a drive from their own 14-yard line, 1st and 10.
So I guess the good news is that Southlake is trapped back in their own, deep in their own end zone again.
Wyatt Watson on the carry for the Eagles.
Watson is 6.
24.
24. I keep.
He has the ball out to the 24-yard line for a gain of 10 yards before being tackled by a Zion Scott. That's good for an Eagle 1st down.
So there's where you see the advantage of starting so deep in your own territory. A 10-yard gain, that's nothing to sneeze at. It's a very strong run on 1st down, but they're still only at their own 24, 76 yards from the end zone. Probably a good 56 from even being on the borderline of field goal. So now the defense again has pretty much established himself as the face of this program, and they're going to have to come up big here. Southlake's got some momentum building here. Ooh, solid hitting there.
21?
No, 20. Oh, is that 21? I didn't see it.
Boykin on the carry for a gain of 2 yards, 2nd and 8.
21. 21.
Sure.
That's Boykin, right? Okay.
A reverse pass to Watson. It's going to take the whole Mustang defensive line to bring it down.
And his helmet came off, too, at the end there. Again, here in the early going, Southlake is really making that veer work very well for them. They're cutting those lanes off and allowing the running back or the ball carrier to be able to turn the ball upfield at that 90-degree angle. Again, the idea of this veer is you get 3 linemen who pull in one direction, the running back runs in the other. Thus, you're sealing it off, almost like when you close a door.
Wyatt Watson with a 14-yard gain after the reverse pass to him. Luther Johnson leads the Mustang defense on the tackle. It's good for an Eagle first down.
That was 24.
This one's going nowhere. And a flag. Watson on the carry, a late flag. No, excuse me, that's Boykin on the carry, a late flag on the play.
So now we're seeing Southlake start to incorporate Boykin into the rushing attack.
Holding called against the offense. That's a 10-yard penalty from the spot of the foul. And a replay of the down.
So, Mark, I don't think it's a big secret, but penalties kill drives.
Yeah, certainly that's not the direction they want to be moving. That's going to pull the ball all the way back to what looks like about the 27, maybe 28-yard line. Of course, that penalty is assessed from the spot of the foul, and apparently it occurred a couple yards behind the line of scrimmage.
Where is the ball?
So that puts the ball at the 28, and it brings up first down and 22. I know the down marker over there, the distance says second, but that would be a replay of down, so this should be still first down.
Yeah, and again, this is such a drive killer, not because they didn't gain yardage, but because Southlake was starting to build some momentum. They were finding some weaknesses and attacking those weaknesses in the Mustang defense.
Pass intended for Michael Walker falls incomplete. It brings up 2nd and 22 for the Eagles.
And you see there on 2nd and 22, you're looking to make passes. And as I mentioned at the beginning, passing is not a forte of Southlake. That's why they run the veer formation, or the veer concept, out of the split back formation.
Drop back for the pass. He's got a man. Oh, and it's caught. Look at that. The pass is complete to Tyler Rickards. Down past midfield, and it's enough for an Eagle first down. Well, Neil, turns out it didn't matter whether it was 2nd or 3rd down there.
Yeah, again, another mistake in the secondary. It was one-on-one coverage. Who's 27?
27 for us?
Yeah, he was the cover man.
Hold on. You said 27? Antoine Johnson.
So Johnson, again, was one-on-one, and he overran the play there, and Southlake took advantage of his over-eagerness there, throwing underneath him. That was a comeback route.
Gain of 29 on the completion to Rickards.
Who caught that?
Rickards.
No, the number.
27. Devontae Harper on the carry, a loss of 1 on the play, 2nd and 11.
Now we got motion here. And again, that's the kind of pass that you're going to see Southlake going to more often than not. The quick bubble screen, which is like the long handoff.
Who caught it?
3, I think.
Pass is complete to Sardamian Yutzi. Aquila Sumter on the tackle. A loss of 1 on the play. Takes the ball to the 45-yard line and brings up 3rd and 12.
And that play wasn't going anywhere from the beginning, Mark. The one-on-one coverage there read it beautifully, knew what was coming up, wrapped his arms around the receiver as soon as the ball was caught. Now, of course, critical play here on 3rd down. You don't want him to get a first down. It's that simple. You got to stop the bleeding, as you like to say, Mark.
Pass is complete to Wyatt Watson. Jamel Lynch makes the tackle. And so that one is at least positive yardage, but not nearly enough for the first down.
Yeah, good job there by the defense understanding the situation. That particular situation, you don't need to prevent the pass, just don't let the pass be a long pass.
That was 24, right?
Mm-hmm. Is that about 6 yards?
4.
4 yards. And now again, we're going to see Southlake going for the first down here. Same situation as their first possession. Really don't gain anything on a punt, and you're out of field goal range.
Open man. The pass complete to Sardamian Yutzi. Aquila Sumter makes the tackle right away, but not before the Eagles pick up a first down. So again, Neil, that's similar to what we saw a couple plays ago.
Yeah, and Wekiva's a quarter, almost at halftime here. Their problem is not, they have a very specific problem, and that's they keep giving up these long passes on 3rd down. They keep giving up passes of about over 7-8 yards on 3rd down, and that's Southlake's being forced into 3rd and long situations, and Wekiva's giving up those passes which allow them to get those first downs.
We've reached the midpoint of the second quarter, and so we'll pause for an official timeout. For those of you here at Baptiste Orthodontic Stadium, we want to remind you that tonight's game is being broadcast live on the NFHS network as well as YouTube. So if you have friends and family back home who are not able to join us in person tonight, whether they are here in Apopka or all the way out in Groveland, make sure you send them a note right now and let them know that they can search for Wekiva Sports on YouTube or the NFHS network, or they can get the direct links from our Twitter page, Wekiva Sports, or our website, wekivamustangs.com, and watch on their favorite computer, smart TV, or mobile device.
Is that the 27?
25. 25. Sack.
Much needed.
Troy Shirley is sacked by Johnny Cheney and Duncan McClendon.
Yeah, that's a play Wekiva needed there. Again, I don't think you need to be a football guru to understand a couple of big plays there for Southlake. Need to stop some momentum.
A loss of 3 on the play. It brings up 2nd and 13 for the Eagles.
But, of course, the question now, Mark, is what do they do on 2nd and 3rd down? That's where Wekiva's gotten into trouble, as I just mentioned. They keep giving up long plays on 3rd and long.
And we've got some movement. Flag on the play. Prior to the snap, offsides called against the Mustang defense. That's 5-yard penalty from the previous spot and a replay of 2nd down. So, Neil, another unforced error there. I believe that is the 3rd offsides penalty that the Mustangs have suffered so far.
Yeah, by my count, it is the 3rd one. And again, you know, you and I, we work with Coach Bettis some. But that's just penalties that drives any coaches up the wall, turns their hair gray. You know, again, I don't think you have to understand or be a football guru that you're giving the other team free yardage and you're making life easier for them, in particular the distance. What was the 2nd and 13 is now 2nd and 8.
Devontae Harper on the carry. That gets the ball down to the 19-yard line for a gain of 4. Brings up 3rd down.
So now Southlake not going to anything fancy here, just trying to feel out Wekiva. Again, they're a team that don't really take a lot of risks because they don't want to make mistakes. Let the other team outthink themselves and make mistakes. Say it was 4 yards?
Yeah. Hand off to Watson. He goes up the middle and meets a wall of Mustangs. Watson on the carry, and the peloton of Mustangs led by Aquilas Sumter. It is just enough for an Eagle first down. The ball spotted at the 15-yard line for a gain of 4.
And there, Mark, penalty comes into play. Like you mentioned, a 4-yard gain, penalty offsides is 5.
Hand off up the middle. Harper on the carry. Stop made by Blair, gain of 2.
So again, Southlake, nothing fancy, just running that split back formation, using the VAR concept, which requires running between the tackles.
Looking to pass, going to the corner. Good coverage by the Mustangs. Pass intended for Michael Walker is incomplete. Kendall Wilson on the coverage. 3rd down.
Even if that ball was caught there, it would have been a minimal gain, about 2 yards. So we're once again 3rd down and long. And now Wekiva, again, this has been their bugaboo, these 3rd down and long distance for conversion. And of course, something you don't see nearly as much as you used to. Of course, it was always a standard that you had a huddle. Southlake, of course, along with that split back formation and VAR concept, used the huddle.
Way down to the end zone, and the pass is ruled incomplete.
Ooh, take a breath there, Mustang Nation.
Oh, that was close. 18. The pass intended for Tyler Rickards is defended by Zion Scott.
Yeah, that pass was like perfectly thrown. On that type of pass, what's the quarterback's name again?
Shirley.
Shirley threw that ball exactly the way you want to, looping over the top there, put it just on the outside shoulder of your receiver, so your receiver is the only person who can touch it. And now they're going to...
Yeah, once bitten, twice shy. And this is Wekiva timeout. The Mustangs request their first timeout of the first half.
Is it 4th down?
Yeah.
Okay.
So once bitten, twice shy. The Eagles not looking to go for the field goal here, or at least that's not how they lined up before the timeout. We'll take this opportunity to thank our friends at Baptiste Orthodontics, our signature sponsor this season. Dr. Baptiste and his team at any of their 3 Orlando area offices are looking forward to taking care of you and all of your orthodontic needs. They now have a new location that just opened last year. We were proud to be part of that grand opening. Just across the street from Kit Land Nelson Park, deep in the heart of downtown Apopka. That joins their other 2 Orlando area locations, making it more convenient than ever for you to get your orthodontic care. Make sure to mention that you are an OCPS student, and particularly a student of Wekiva, for special pricing offers. Baptiste Orthodontics, bracing you for success.
And you know, Mark, even though we're not in the second half, I think the fact that Southlake is going for the first down here says a lot about their kicking game. They just don't have confidence in it. You're only looking at a 29-yard field goal. It's not a long-range one.
Going to that same play again. And it is intercepted in the end zone by a Zion Scott. And that is automatically a touchback, and so the Mustangs will take over at their own 20-yard line with 26.7 seconds left in the second quarter.
As you just said, Mark, once bitten, twice shy. This time, though, it's Wekiva with the
there are worse things than a blocked field goal.
So again, the defense has come up big. It's been a bend but don't break kind of night, at least so far. We've seen them again. Their biggest problem has been giving up that first down on 3rd and long, but they've overcome it. 2 big plays, a blocked field goal the last time, and now an INT.
Light him right in the numbers. Pass complete to Jamon Coleman, and he is down to the 50-yard line for a gain of 30.
Getty up.
Well, there's unfortunately the band is already warming up for halftime because that would have been a good time for the fight song sting.
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly it would be a good time for our generator to put up some Mustang graphics there, the Getty Up, the Old West. That certainly looked like Coleman got on his horse there.
Yes, well, if you'd like to get a video scoreboard for Baptiste Orthodontic Stadium, send your checks payable to Wekiva High School in care of Athletic Director Bobby Biaggi. And as soon as we collect about 30 grand, we'll be glad to make that happen for you.
Nonetheless, that's only the 3rd pass thrown by Preston tonight. Like we said, you're going to see a lot of ground and pound tonight with Davis getting back. And, of course, now he's Davis returned to the lineup. It's his 2nd game, so the rust is worn off. But that was a beautifully called play as far as the timing. First down, who caught, what's the number?
Jamon Coleman, number 29, picked up 30 yards for the Mustangs there. And, of course, if Wekiva wants to, strike thunder here, they're going to have to do it quickly. A dangerous pass, but they'll get at least no worse for it.
Well, the one good thing here, Mark, with 12.9 seconds, that 30-yard completion does, Wekiva's really in a nothing-to-lose position. Even if Southlake comes up with the interception, it's probably at least 70 yards from the end zone.
Pass intended for Assad Wasim falls incomplete. It brings up 2nd and 10 from midfield. Yeah, you're right, Neil. That was, it was a dangerous play, but it was still a perfectly wise play in that situation. And look for the Mustangs to do something similar here again. Coleman trying to get open. And this one, that was an easy pick.
Coleman fell down, and now, of course, like we mentioned, really 80 yards or so to bring the DB down. There's also the quarterback there, Shirley.
Yes. The pass is intercepted by Shirley, and that will take us to halftime with a 7-0 lead for the Mustangs going into the locker rooms. So let's see. For the sake of special teams yardage, he picked that up at, we'll say, the 10 and got tackled at the 15.
actually need a recommendation from my class, but I only need like 2 or 3 sentences, and I wrote it out.
So, Neil, as we get ready to see the halftime show, as the Wekiva Marching Band gets set up here, let's put that graphic up again and explain how we got to where we are. So, again, the preferred way to get into the playoffs is to be the number one team in the district. And that's done the same way it always has been done, which is strictly by district win-loss record and the old-fashioned tie-breaking rules. Niceville, this could change because this is through 9 weeks, but Niceville is very likely going to be the District 1 champion. Edgewater has locked up for certain the District 3 championship. Fleming Island will be the District 2 champion in all likelihood. And then Winter Springs, a little unusual there because Winter Springs has the second lowest RPI of any team in their district. They actually have not been having a great season, but they've won a couple of key district games. They have a 2-0 record in their district, and so they haven't. Now this could change because they have a district game tonight, so they could fall to 2-1 and slip below Lake Howell or East River. But at least for the moment, they are actually in as the number 4 seed, in spite of the fact that they have a losing record. So that gives you your 1, 2, 3, and 4. Edgewater has the highest RPI of any of the 4 district champions at 710. That's not surprising. Niceville coming in behind them. Fleming Island 3rd and Winter Springs 4th. So there's your number 1, 2, 3, and 4 for the regional tournament. Those will be the 4 host schools if the season were to end yesterday. Now, obviously, none of this is final. These numbers can all shift, and especially because RPI goes 3 levels deep on your record, it's very difficult to predict exactly where these numbers are going to go. So then you take all of the remaining schools who are not number 1, and you put them all in the non-district champions, and you put them all in a single ranked list all together. And so when you smush them together, Wekiva has the highest RPI of any non-district champion at 642. And they actually have a fair amount of distance between them and the next closest school. Then you got 3 schools from District 1, Crestview, Lincoln, and Childs, way up in the Panhandle, that are your 6, 7, and 8 schools. Then on the bubble, you've got Navarre, Fletcher, East River, and Lake Howell. If the season ended before today, they would not make the playoffs, but they are certainly within striking distance if Crestview, Lincoln, or Childs, or Wekiva for that matter, were to falter this week and next week. So you could see some shifting because the 5, 6, 7, and 8 schools will go on to play against the 1, 2, 3, and 4 schools. So if I can call up here the brackets, again, this is if the season had ended after last week, which obviously it didn't, but this is just hypothetically. If I were to take those results that I just showed you and I were to pack those into the graphic, I'm going to find it here.
Yeah, and something else, too, to remember, as you said, Mark, you have 3 teams, 6, 7, and 8 seeds. They're all from District 1. Now, Childs most likely, I don't think Childs can win their district anymore. They were 2 and 3. But Crestview, Niceville, Crestview, and Lincoln still have an opportunity to win District 1. As you mentioned, Niceville is the leader right now, but if Crestview or Lincoln were to win that district, then that would also knock, not only would it knock Niceville out of the number 2 seed, but it would knock their RPI below Wekiva. Wekiva would get another advantage in securing that number 5 seed.
So if you take a look at the bracket here, this is what would happen if the season had ended after week 9. You'd have Childs at Edgewater, Wekiva at Winter Springs, Crestview at Fleming Island, and Lincoln at Niceville. That's how, because it's 1 versus 8, 4 versus 5, 3 versus 6, and 2 versus 7.
It's always the lowest numbered seed against the highest numbered seed.
Correct. And so that is where we would end up. So let's get the band on the field, and then we'll talk about this a little more after their show. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and please now welcome to the field for your halftime entertainment, the pride of Wekiva, your Marching Mustangs. The Wekiva High School Marching Mustangs are under the direction of Mr. Joshua Grosniklas. The color guard is under the direction of Mr. Michael McKee. The associate director is Mr. Frank Taylor. The percussion instructor is Mr. Robert Cross. And the brass technician is Mr. James Dawson. The Marching Mustangs are under the field command of drum majors Layla Allen and Amaria Patrick. The band captain is Antonio Martinez. And the lieutenants are Alyssa Sanchez and Caleb Edwards. The drum captains are Jacob Saris and Jonathan Williams. The guard captain is Shelma Demosthane. The Wekiva Marching Mustangs are proud to present to you tonight our 2019 field show Fusion, featuring the music from Cirque du Soleil. Selections tonight will include Distorted from Lanuba, Journey of Man and Youth from Journey of Man, Incantation from Quidam. Drum majors, Layla Allen and Amaria Patrick. Is the band ready? Thank you, and we now present for your halftime entertainment, Fusion.
I used to play hockey out at RDV on my other places. What I was saying is,
once again, ladies and gentlemen, the pride of Wekiva, your Mustang Marching Band. Frank gave it to me at the last second. All right, Neil, well, we are getting ready to go back to live action here at Baptiste Orthodontic Stadium, and the Mustangs, they're nearly losing some traction on account of the fumble, but they are able to escape thanks to a turnover of the Eagles' own, and now they'll get the ball first to start the second half.
Yeah, that was kind of a...
And it's an onside. Mustangs right on top of it, though.
I mean, paying attention there. Now, as we get ready to start the second half, Mark, of course, I think anybody who follows Wekiva would expect us to say this. Second half, that's been Wekiva's strength. They come out. They've certainly been a second half team. But really, this game should be at least 17-0. At the very least 14-0, as you mentioned, Chad Davis's.
Malik Carter will have no advance after picking up the onside kick. The Mustangs will start their first possession of the third quarter from their own 39-yard line.
Now we're going to see something unusual, at least we haven't seen yet. That's Preston with the rush. Fake the handoff to Davis there. Good call, picking up a first down.
QB keep by Larry Preston and tackled by the other quarterback, Troy Shirley, after getting around the outside corner for a Mustang first down.
Ball was at Wekiva's 40.
39.
39. Is that 13?
Yeah, sure. Yep. Couple of good blocks. Still on his feet. It's another Larry Preston QB keep and another Mustang first down.
So we're seeing Wekiva bring a third man into the rushing attack here. And perhaps this was part of the strategy to wait till the second half to bring Preston into it.
A gain of 18 that time.
But again, going back to that first half, Davis gained 72 yards on 5 carries, but that fumble kept the score at 7-0.
Amari Thomas on the carry. Michael Walker on the tackle. No gain, 2nd and 10.
And if he scores, if Wekiva can go in and score, you're looking at a 14-0 game. They've scored twice on 2 consecutive possessions.
Larry Preston on the carry. Tackle made by Troy Shirley. And it looks like the Eagles may also have a renaissance man, just like we have Larry Preston, who plays many positions. There, Troy Shirley, who is the quarterback, also seems to be a significant part of their defense.
Yeah, both playing quarterback in the secondary. How many yards was that?
We'll call it 7. This time the snap is to Preston. He wastes no time going straight up the middle. Preston punches through to about the 20-yard line. It is enough for a Mustang first down.
Yeah, and that was not a play, nothing fancy there. That was just a let's get the first down and move forward from there. Just run it straight ahead. And
It's a gain of 3, but that's all he needed.
Right. And the way the offensive line's blocking here at the start of the second half, you can pretty much guarantee 3 yards. Preston runs up to the line and falls forward.
Amari Thomas on the carry, picking up 4 yards there. 2nd and 6 coming up for the Mustangs from the 16-yard line.
So now we're seeing Wekiva going more to the methodical, steady approach here. 3-4 yards at a time. And again, if you're Wekiva, it's not your primary
look at this
option.
punch through. Thomas gets some room. Did he make it? Yes, he
did.
Amari Thomas into the end zone for a 16-yard Mustang touchdown.
Well, I was wrong again, Mark. I said it looked like Wekiva was going to the slow, steady approach there, getting 3-4 yards, trying to take off as much time off the clock here. Not necessarily your primary objective at this point, but certainly doesn't hurt. And it's an added bonus. And no sooner than I say that, they go to that off tackle, hitting with Thomas hitting the line between the tackles and the guards.
Brian Wilson's extra point attempt is good, and the Mustangs take a 14-0 lead with 8 minutes, 43 seconds remaining in the third quarter.
So again, a little bit different, a subtle change there in the fact that they're hitting the line of scrimmage at a different angle, and then Thomas cut back once he got on the other side of the line of scrimmage, and then cut back yet again for a third time, and it pays off in dividends there. That really was not a fancy play in terms of concept. Just hit the line at a slightly different angle, allowed Thomas to build up some speed, and next thing you know, we got a 14-0 ball game here. And as I mentioned, Mark, Wekiva's been a second-half team, so sticking to the script, you know, maybe it's the fare of when Bedison lights into them at halftime. But certainly a much different-looking team here for this first possession of the second half. And now we got an issue. Who's got the ball? Oh, Southlake lucky to retrieve that ball there.
The kickoff is muffed and finally brought under control by number 16. But that will leave the Eagles with a very long field in front of them.
So now, Mark, you know, I played high school football, and I've been covering it for almost 30 years. Brings up a question. I've never really thought about this, but was that actually officially a fumble? I don't believe either player touched the ball.
Yeah, I mean, what it is statistically is not so important as what it is effectually, and that is a 99-yard field and an opportunity for the Mustang defense to think about a safety here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yes, like you say, where it is more important, where it winds up. But it does still bring up an interesting question as a sidelight. So now again, East Ridge relies exclusively on the Bear formation
out of split back formation, their motion, their concept of attack.
24.
And with that rush, just trying to create a little bit of room there to operate behind the line. Trying to hit the hole there with an angle behind the tackle. Maybe you might get a break there and a misalignment by Wekiva. Oh, there it is. That was a blitz there. The linebacker came up on the right side. Linebacker came up on the right side, and thus East River had to overload on that side, leaving that left side open.
So who got the safety?
I couldn't see. You see who got the safety? See who got the safety? Who made the tackle? No, who? Number 36. 36.
Was it a sack? Was it the quarterback?
Yeah. That was about as quick a safety as you can get there. That line just collapsed all right away. Looked like Eastridge, again, Southlake saw the linebacker come up on the right side, and that pretty much weakened their left side.
Cedric Blair coming up with the safety for the Mustangs as the quarterback, Troy Shirley, tackled inside their own end zone, and that will give the Mustangs a 16-0 lead with 7 minutes, 48 seconds remaining in the third quarter.
That was 36, right?
Yes, it was.
And his last name's Blair?
Yes. Jamon Coleman on the return for the Mustangs. And, of course, the other insult that gets added to injury when you have a safety is that you also have to kick the ball away.
Yeah, I always mention, of course, we've worked together a number of years, Mark, so you've heard me say this many times. I don't necessarily think the fact that the team that scores the safety gets the ball, it's big, but I think it's even bigger the fact that they're going to get the ball in excellent field position because the team that gives up the safety has to punt the ball. They can't kick it off.
Was there a flag? Yes. What was the flag?
I just saw the yellow.
All right, so some form of flag is going to start the Mustangs at the 41, so maybe not quite such excellent field position, but still pretty good.
No, but an opportunity to really pretty much put this game away as far as a victory here. It'd be a 4-score game late in the third quarter. Now we're seeing Preston again. He did not run the ball at all in the first half, and now they're going to a lot of sweeps and delayed draws designed to go outside the tackles. That was Preston.
Oh, there it is.
About 9 yards.
Larry Preston picks up 8 on the play, 2nd and 2 coming up.
So some big plays here again put together by the Mustangs.
Oh, yeah.
And now again, excellent timing to call a pass.
Pass complete to Assad Wasim for a big Mustang. First down.
23, right? So Wasim there finds a seam in that secondary. Really the area between the linebacker and the secondary. Nothing fancy there. It wasn't a down the field play. It was about a 7-yard run, and then he crossed over the middle. Preston, excellent job of putting the ball right where Wasim was supposed to be after making the cut. Again, timing essential for that kind of play there. But it all starts with the fact that that was the right time to call that pass after Wekiva has gashed the Southlake defense, and in particular their front seven, with the rushing attack.
We've reached the midpoint of the third quarter, and so we'll pause here for an official timeout. So again, we'll quickly show you on the screen here, if the season had ended before today, it would be Wekiva against Winter Springs, but then that would set Wekiva up for most likely the most difficult game in the 7A1 bracket, which would be against probably Edgewater in the second round. So there may be a part of the Mustangs that wouldn't mind going into the 6 slot instead of the 5 slot, for the simple reason that that would not put them against Edgewater until the championship game. Pass complete to Assad Wasim, and he is into the end zone for a Mustang touchdown.
So that possession starts off with another strong rush there. Preston doing the honors of 8 yards, but they go to the air. 2 beautifully called plays as far as the timing in the right sequence, as far as the sequence of rushing versus passing. And they're the right calls played, both timing routes, both of them passes that the receiver has to be led into the ball. That there was a simple bubble screen just running straight up the hash mark there on the right side. Preston sliding to his right a couple of steps there and throwing the ball into the area where Wasim is supposed to be on a straight line, running a straight line route. And just like that, Mark, we talked about Wekiva being a second-half team. A 7-0 lead is now 23-0 in a matter of 5 minutes and change. So Wekiva has gained 103 total yards here at the beginning of the second half, after gaining only 124 through the entire first half.
Canal Basin from the 15-yard line and tackled by a Zion Scott at the 20-yard line after a return of 5 yards. The Eagles will start their next drive from their own 20-yard line.
And that must be mentioned too, Mark. Southlake's had 2 possessions here, one at the 1 and the 20. So not only is Wekiva running roughshod in terms of total yards, 2 series, 103 yards, but Southlake combined is looking, well, their average starting position is their own 10-yard line. Heavy heat there. Heavy heat and having to throw the ball on the run, but completion.
Pass is complete to Giovanni Rivers, and that is good for an Eagle first down.
Who caught that?
Gain of 17 on the play puts the ball at the 37-yard line for first and 10.
And again, Mark, Wekiva's giving up those big plays. Now again, as I mentioned in the first half, because the field position was so bad, there is an advantage. You know, they just completed 17 yards, and yet they're only at their own 37. But still, opportunity to really put the foot on the throat, so to speak, they're gone by the wayside.
Wyatt Watson on the carry, tackled by Nathan Pierre after a gain of 2 yards. Second and 8 coming up for the Eagles from their own 39-yard line.
Say Watson ran 24. So again, if you're new to Wekiva football, they run a 3-4 formation, and they're blitzing again, leaving one linebacker back. Pays dividends. It's been tough going for the Southlake running backs there, especially hitting the middle of that line. And as we mentioned, Southlake runs the Veer attack, Veer concept out of the split back formation, and that essentially means you're running the ball straight up the middle. I think it was 6. Lost 2 yards. Actually lost like 4 yards.
Harper back to the original line of scrimmage with a loss of 2. That brings up 3rd and 10.
So again, another 3rd and long for Southlake. Wekiva's Bugaboo's been giving up those passes.
Pass intended for Rickards falls incomplete. That'll bring up 4th and 10.
So this time Wekiva does not allow that first down. Shirley forced out of the pocket. Unlike the last 3rd down, which they converted into a first down, he was unable to get the ball in the air, had to throw that ball low. And really couldn't lead his receiver into the pass like he'd like to.
Mustangs not going to get anything out of this. They probably should have let that one go.
Yeah, again, bad decision in this particular case. Fortunately, it was not a decision which wound up costing them. The ball was actually touched far enough on their side of the field where there was not enough time for Southlake to get up to the ball. But still, like you mentioned, a bad decision trying to field the ball in the first place.
Coleman makes no advance after recovering the ball at the 34-yard line. The Mustangs will start their next drive from there with 1st and 10.
So Wekiva scored on their 2 possessions here in the 3rd quarter. Obviously, the question is, can they make it 3 in a row? And again, rushing has been the primary attack, but they've thrown in a couple of nice passes, including the last 2 that ended the last series.
So now the Mustangs go to something more traditional with Chad Davis going up the middle. That takes the ball out to the 44-yard line, and it's just enough for a Mustang first down.
Yeah, and again, I don't think we're going to see much fanciness, although Wekiva has shown it. I think we're going to see a lot of running here, and no sooner do I say that than they go back to the pass.
Pass complete to Assad Wasim. He gets close to first down yardage before being taken down by number 34.
And that's the 3rd straight completion to Wasim.
That's good for a pickup of 9 yards. 2nd and 1 coming up from the 47-yard line of Eagle territory. And another nicely placed pass. For the first time tonight, the pass complete to Harleante Reed. That gets the ball down inside the 30 to the 28-yard line for a Mustang first down.
So 81. So again, that was a lead pass. Excellent job by Preston, as you mentioned, Mark, but this time it was more of a floating over-the-top pass as opposed to an angled pass.
And Preston wanted to throw that time, but seeing nothing that he liked in the secondary, Preston will keep it for himself.
So again, we talk about decisions, and a number of mistakes have been made by Wekiva this year because of bad decisions. In that particular case, Preston made a good decision. I'll live to fight another day. Just put the ball down, get a yard or 2, and regroup. So 2 yards? 3?
And there he finds Reed again. And some room to breaks a couple of tackles, drags the Southlake secondary with him. And Harleante Reed picks up a big first down for the Mustangs. So Harleante Reed has not been thrown at until this drive, and now he has 2 big first downs.
2 in a row. Where's the ball?
Ball is spotted at the 8-yard line, bringing up 1st and goal. First and 8. You got 1st and 10, Pass intended for Assad Wasim falls incomplete. That'll bring up 2nd and goal.
And there, Wekiva rolling Preston, rolling him out. Again, that's a good change of pace, but also puts Preston in the position where he can make some good decisions. If he throws that ball incomplete, unless he throws it back across his body to the inside, he's going to put that ball in a position where only his receiver can catch it. Worst case scenario is what you just saw. The ball was thrown out of bounds.
Little lateral there to Davis. Got some room. Punches his way to the goal line, and he's in. Chad Davis into the end zone for a Mustang touchdown.
How many yards does Davis have? Should be over 100. So I believe Davis is over 100 yards. Again, folks, if you're listening, just please bear with us.
Yes, well, he's close. He's at 90.
90, okay. So not quite the century mark, but certainly, as we mentioned, he was out of the lineup when the two losses occurred to Dr. Phillips and Edgewater. Since he's come back, we've seen a powerful rushing attack, or, if you prefer, Mustang football. And again, that rushing attack, being able to gain 4.5 yards, opens up the field for the passing.
Brian Wilson's extra point is good. The Mustangs improve their lead to 30-0 with 34.6 seconds remaining in the third quarter. And now, Neil, the thought on your mind, if you are an Eagle, is one more score, and we're looking at a running clock.
So again, as Coach Bedison said after winning last week, Davis brings the ability to run downhill. They're not running north and south. They're running down. I mean, they're running north and south. They're not running east and west, but they're running with power and physicality. Again, that was not a sweep, although it did go outside the hash marks. A delayed draw there. And Wekiva did an excellent job, the coaching staff, an excellent job of calling that delayed draw at the right time. Southlake was not expecting any kind of play in which the field was getting spread out there. What was the time of the score?
34.6 seconds. And Alfason takes the ball from the 25-yard line, runs it back to about the 31 for 6 yards on the return, and the Eagles will take over from there with 1st and 10.
So a 23-point quarter here by Wekiva certainly falls under the category of continuing to be a second-half team. And as you mentioned, Mark, Southlake takes over possession of the ball at their own 31. That is their best field position of the second half. Oh, got a fumble ball. The line collapsed right away. And Shirley never had an opportunity to even really get back, let alone set up blindside sack.
Johnny Cheney with a fumble recovery, and the Mustangs take over.
So lightning quick there by Wekiva, got the shoulders down and pushed that offensive line back. Surely, again, it wasn't just a matter of him not being able to set up, but he really couldn't even drop back. He couldn't complete his drop back.
So not only do the Mustangs pick up possession here, that was also a net loss of 20 yards on the play for the Eagles.
So, and Shirley never had an opportunity to see anything there. You know, I have a feeling that Shirley was probably like when you're swimming and you get flipped over, you're just seeing a lot of light and darkness.
Handoff made to Chad Davis, and the Eagles are there and ready.
It's a ball at the 10.
It was at the 11.
Yeah.
It's going to be a loss. Loss of 4 on the play.
And who ran that?
And that takes us to the end of the third period. The Mustangs holding on to a 30-0 lead and in striking distance, 14 yards away from the end zone as we head into the final period. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you here in the stadium with us, if you are depending on a ride to get home from tonight's game and you have not already done so, make sure you give your ride a call and let them know that we are headed into the fourth quarter and they should be on their way to pick you up shortly. We remind you that Orange County policy is that campus facilities stay open for no more than 30 minutes after the conclusion of any extracurricular activity. We appreciate your cooperation in clearing the campus promptly after the conclusion of tonight's game.
So, Mark, this is one of those moments I'm glad I'm not playing sports anymore. The refs and the players take that long walk to the other side of the field. So that was actually an excellent play there by Southlake, one of the few times Wekiva has gone backwards tonight.
Pass is complete to Harleante Reed, and he is into the end zone for Mustang touchdown. And there's your running clock.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Mark, for almost 3 quarters, Reed was never even thrown to, and now he's caught 4 balls and a touchdown. That was an easy play there. Preston and Reed made it look like it was a scrimmage in midsummer.
Oh, no. And the snap is muffed on the extra point, and so that will be no good, but the Mustangs extend their lead to 36-0. with just under 12 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter.
Was it like 11:50? So as you mentioned, Mark, too, we are now under a running clock. That means the clock does not stop except for timeouts called by a team or when a team scores. When they score, it stops, right? Oh, okay. It does not include when the team scores. So given that it's 36-0, it's unlikely that we're going to see a timeout. Of course, Coach Bedison has no reason to call a timeout. And if you're Coach Wildum, I don't really understand why you would want to extend being out here as long as possible.
Yeah, it's a long drive back to Groveland.
You want to get into that bus as soon as possible now.
DJ Boykin is dropped by Zion Scott.
So again, 29 straight points, unanswered points here in the second half by Wekiva. 2 of the touchdowns were set up by turnovers by Southlake. And again, both of them were just about simple a turnover as possible. Blindside sacks. Line collapsed right as soon as the snap took place. Shirley not only had no time to set up, but he had no time to complete his drop back and got hit and couldn't see anything. So I think it's safe now that we're in running clock territory to say Wekiva will win tonight. They will, barring an incredible set of circumstances, which are about 0.5% likely to happen because there's about 12 different. The set of occurrences which needs to happen, preventing them from not getting into the playoff numbers, about 12. Looks like Wekiva is going to be in the playoffs for a 4th straight year.
Yeah, barring a lot of movement that seems very unlikely in the RPI indexes, the Mustangs should be able to finish somewhere in that 5 to 8 range.
Most likely they'll be the number 5 seed, but certainly, as we mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, they'd have to lose 4 positions, and they'd have to also lose, I believe it was 0.102 RPI.
Giovanni Rivers picks up a gain of 13. That takes the ball into Mustang territory at the 48-yard line and brings up 1st and 10.
And as we mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, also their next opponent, of course, is Popka, the Tater Bowl, the equivalent of Florida State in high school, or back in my home state, Michigan, Ohio State. It's not just a meeting between two schools that win 7-8 games every year, two teams that go to the playoffs, have advanced deep in recent years. But it's also an opportunity to gain some pretty big RPI points. One of the two teams, Wekiva or Popka, is going to come off the field next week feeling like they missed an opportunity. They left an opportunity to really solidify their playoff seeding as well as RPI stature on the table. And so Wekiva, by getting this victory, took advantage of the easier of the two opponents that they could really solidify that RPI standing and heading some momentum into the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll put up that graphic one more time shortly here when we get to the end of the game, kind of showing where we think things are starting to shake out unless the RPI ratings change significantly over the next week and a half here. Once again, we've got Watson on the carry for the Eagles. A loss of 1 on the play. 3rd and 11 coming up.
Now we're under 7 minutes in this ball game. I see Coach Bedesum is taking the headphones off.
Well, one thing that this will do is it will inflate the Eagles' time of possession stat a little bit since we have a running clock.
That is true. And of course, Wekiva, it's not an entire set of substitutes, but certainly not the whole starting lineup is out on the field anymore.
Pass intended for Amari Rivers falls incomplete. It brings up 4th and 11. So, Neil, I'm not sure what you do here. I mean, you can just go back to conventional football and punt the ball away to risk no further embarrassment, or you could say, well, gosh, we've got nothing to lose. Why not practice a 4th down conversion?
Well, if I'm South Lake, Mark, I think I go with your latter discussion there. You got nothing to lose, and quite frankly, it's a running clock. I don't really think you're going to get any more embarrassed.
No, I think that, I mean, Wekiva at this point, you expect us to go back to classic Larry Preston at this point once Wekiva does get the ball back. And is it good coverage? Yes, it is good coverage. Pass intended for Sudamian Yutzi, covered well by Antoine Johnson, and the pass falls incomplete. And there is a flag near the line of scrimmage. Holding called against the offense. That penalty is declined. The result of the play is a over on downs to the Mustangs. And we've reached the midpoint of the 4th quarter, so we'll pause for our final timeout of the game.
So I think at this point, you're just going to see Wekiva run out the clock, run the ball up the middle. Let's get out of here without any injuries. Tonight's business was, as we just mentioned, and we have throughout the broadcast, getting that 7th win, which gives you about 99.5% likelihood of getting into the playoffs, even if you lose next week to Popka. That business has been taken care of and accomplished.
Ladies and gentlemen, a reminder that we are now in a running clock situation, and so when we say 5 minutes, we mean 5 minutes. If you are depending on a ride to get home from tonight's game and you've not already done so, please let them know that we are exactly 5 minutes away from the conclusion of tonight's game, and they should be on their way to pick you up. We appreciate your cooperation in helping us to clear the campus promptly after the conclusion of the game. Jamon Coleman on the carry.
And now the band is striking up the "It's Time to Celebrate."
A gain of 5 on the play. 2nd and 5 coming up for Wekiva from the 46-yard line. And look for a lot more of this. Oh, actually, it's a direct. Coleman took that snap himself. All right. Javon Coleman with a direct snap, and he gets all the way down to the 31-yard line for a Mustang first down.
So as we get under 4 minutes here, Mark, I think we've pretty much explained tonight's game. Really, Wekiva was the better team. To be honest, they made some mistakes, especially in the early going. I know that doesn't make Bedesum happy. And in general, Bedesum is not happy about the fact that Wekiva falls behind early.
Yeah, there's some things to clean up. There's some sloppy penalties and a couple of ill-advised throws, but a couple of ball handling errors, to use volleyball parlance. But all in all, a good, clean game.
Well, the bottom line is Wekiva was the more skilled team, and they could overcome those mistakes in the first half. Not to say they made a lot, as you just mentioned, but in the two losses to Dr. Phillips and Edgewater, it wasn't a question of how many mistakes. It was the impact those mistakes had. Again, tonight, because Wekiva was the more skilled team, and not just skilled in talent, but they are bigger, stronger, and faster, they could overcome those mistakes.
Handoff made to Malik Carter. He picks up a gain of 8 on the play, and that'll bring up 3rd and 2.
Under 3 minutes now, 2 minutes 48 seconds to be exact.
And a high snap. Coleman not only recovers it, but stays on his feet. That's some impressive footwork there. That's pretty remarkable to have a high snap that gets away from you and still manage to not lose any yards.
Well, it's the fact that the ball went 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
Right. So in this case, the ball comes to the 20, we'll call that the 28-yard line. So he did lose 4 yards, but still, that could have been a lot worse.
Nonetheless, as we said, running clock, and that's what matters the most. 2 minutes left. Of course, Preston is no longer in the game. We've already lost Brendan Sayre, the original starting quarterback.
Oh, no. The pass is picked off. Pass intercepted by Elijah Nayfield. And let's see, that was at about the 5-yard line.
And just if the really highly unlikely happens and Southlake scores, the clock continues to run.
Correct. Even if the scoring differential falls below 35,
right.
Once you begin a running clock, it stays running for the rest of the game.
Right. Of course.
I believe it is only, I believe it's lacrosse is the only sport that can have a running clock that gets rescinded.
And given how slow that Southlake is lining up here, they're still huddling. I don't think we're going to see any semblance, anything close to a threat of scoring. And that should do it, the sack. There's 50 seconds left. Again, Southlake does not.
Peterson Jedium on the sack. That pulls the ball back to the 33-yard line for a loss of 7.
Again, with Southlake still huddling, I don't think they're going to be able to line up here before 33 seconds expires.
It looks like they are going to try to get one more play off.
Well, they huddled and lined up quicker than they have all game. Now that should do it. 15 seconds left. Down to 10. And let's see, 5.
Harper with a carry to the 41-yard line for a gain of 8, and that will be the last play of the game. 36-0 is the final score on senior night, and the Mustangs will wrap up the home season on a victory. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you so much for coming out tonight or for tuning in on the NFHS Network or YouTube Live to support your Mustang and Eagle athletes. The Mustangs will next be on the road to wrap up their season at Apopka against the Blue Darters in what we like to call the Tater Bowl. The Mustangs are back-to-back winners of that trophy. They'll put it on the line at Apopka next weekend to wrap up the season. And, of course, because of the new RPI system, even though that is not a district game anymore, it does still have the potential to impact the postseason. So we hope to see you at Apopka next Friday night at 7 p.m. to conclude the regular season. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming out tonight to support your Mustang and even more. Please drive carefully and arrive home safely. Have a great night. And for those of you joining us online, Neil and I are going to wrap up with you here as we back away from Baptiste Orthodontic Stadium for the last time of the 2019 regular season. So we'll put that graphic up for you again. All right, so we put the graphic up again so you can see what is at least where we are right now. If the season were to end, season were to have ended as of yesterday, this is what would have happened. Now, these are, of course, very subject to change based on tonight's results as well as next Friday night's results. But barring a shift in the RPIs, these are the 8 teams that we are currently looking at right now as having a realistic shot at getting into the playoffs. You might argue for maybe 4 more teams, which we'll show you in a moment, that are still certainly not eliminated from contention. But it is likely that Wekiva will go in with the 5 seed. Frankly, even if they lose to Apopka next week, which obviously that's still an important game for a lot of morale reasons as the crosstown rivalry game. But the reality is, regardless of the outcome of next week's game, Wekiva is likely to end up in this 5 seed. A loss next week could bump them into the 6 or 7 seed position and put them on the other side of the bracket, but it would be unlikely for Wekiva to lose a whole 10th of an RPI off of a loss to a team that's as good as Apopka. Tonight's game against Southlake, because Southlake does not have a winning record themselves, doesn't really get Wekiva a lot. Don't look for that .642 to really move a lot, I don't think. But it could probably stay about the same, I think, once we mix in tonight's game. And then again, because Apopka is such a strong team, a win against Apopka would really push Wekiva's RPI up, which really doesn't matter anymore because since Wekiva is out of contention for the district championship, it really doesn't matter how high Wekiva's RPI gets at this point. But if Wekiva were to lose, it could modestly reduce their RPI. But again, because Apopka has such a strong record, it would actually probably be minimal damage to the Mustangs' overall playoff picture.
Yeah, Mark, as we started about 2 hours ago, this was actually a rather quick game, looking now at the time. But this was a game, unfortunately, for Wekiva. They really had nothing to gain and a lot to lose. Bottom line, though, is they were supposed to win. They did win. It was a very mundane, pedestrian first half. Wekiva did have a couple of opportunities to go a little bit, take a bigger than 7-0 lead into the halftime, but they really did not show up and play football the way that we know they can until the second half. They scored, 29 unanswered points in that second half, and they gained a total of 326 total yards. 192 of them came in that second half.
To be honest, again, they should have had well over 400 when you look in that first half. But the bottom line is, tonight the business was to win, get into the playoffs. It's not a done deal, as you mentioned, but it's about 0.5% that Wekiva would not get into the playoffs after tonight's victory.
Yeah,
So,
certainly you would expect, based on where we are with the point standings, you would expect, because, of course, 35% of it goes to your own record, 35% to your opponent's record, and 30% to your opponent's records. You multiply that out, Wekiva is now, actually will go higher than 75%. We're now going to go 7 out of 9. So if I do a little quick side math here, at least I can tell you that portion of the calculation will go up to 78%, so 77.7% rather than 75%. Then 61.6% opponents' records, again, not likely to move in the aggregate very much, and the opponents' records a little bit higher than 50%. That is what gets us to our current RPI of 0.642. Now, when we look at where we're going to be going from here, that's where it gets into your overall rankings. And oops, let me get that slide back up again so you can see.
Think it's
there we go.
important to bring this up because, as you mentioned, most likely Wekiva's going to be playing Winter Springs, of course.
Right, and Winter Springs has such an odd road to the playoffs because they're actually a losing team. They do not have a winning record, but they won their 2 district games. So now that could change because they're playing a district game tonight. I don't remember against whom, but they are playing a district game tonight. So if they lose tonight, that would end up potentially making a tie for 2-1, and then they could lose in a head-to-head, and they could fall out of that district champion classification.
And my point is that if they do play Winter Springs, it'd be, for lack of a better way of putting it, it'd be a lot like tonight's game against South Lake. Winter Springs, even though they're first place, I think the best they can do is like 5-5. You look at the records, Wekiva, worst case scenario, will be 7-3. The reason the RPIs and the reason we're going over this and bringing up all these names and districts is for that second round game, or that would be the regional semifinal.
Right, because if Wekiva does in fact get that 5 seed, as we've looked at before, they would likely face Edgewater, because Edgewater is almost certainly, unless something really spectacular happens tonight and next week, Edgewater is almost certainly going to be the number 1 seed. They're going to be the district champion of District 3, and they're going to be the highest RPI team out of any of the district champions, which is going to put them solidly in that 1 seed. And so Wekiva, if they end up in the 5 seed, which is where they are right now, would have, I mean, at least on paper, a relatively easy first round, but they would have a replay of the nightmare that they faced mid-season in the second round. It would be at Edgewater, and it would be against probably the number 1 team in 7A right now. And that is a daunting prospect. Not that the Mustangs could not overcome it, but they would have to certainly pull a bag of tricks that they did not have mid-season. Having Chad Davis back helps a lot. Losing Brendan Sear hurts a little. But they would have to come up with a different game plan than they had mid-season if that were to happen. Now, the other way that this could turn out is if Wekiva loses next week and falls to 6th or 7th place in the RPI, but still has enough RPI points to make the playoffs, then they would likely face one of those teams that you see on the right-hand side of the bracket, which would be a harder first round, to be sure. Fleming Island and Niceville are no joke. Those are teams that we don't know as well because they're a little farther to the north.
A lot farther.
A lot, yeah. And but they are certainly no joke. And so that would be a much harder first round, but that means that for the second round, well, Wekiva could at least delay running into Edgewater until the regional championship game.
Would be the third round.
If you are looking for what teams are likely other than those, Navarre, Fletcher, East River, and Lake Howell are the 4 teams that are kind of knocking on the door. They are, as we say, on the bubble, that they are close enough that if the rankings shift, you could see one of those cross into the 8th place or above, because only 8th place and above get in. So you could see that potentially moving in Navarre, Fletcher, or East River's favor, or Lake Howell. Lake Howell's kind of an outside chance because they're right at 500 for the RPI. Anybody below that in the rankings, and there are lots of teams below that, I would say at this point are all but statistically eliminated from contention for the playoffs.
Yeah, and I'd also like to bring up, Mark, I think we've pretty much covered all the different scenarios, but going into next week's game, of course, Apopka could be 8-1. They're playing Lake Mary tonight. Lake Mary's 5-3, but the two teams are tied in the District 8A4 standings. So that game tonight is for the district champion. Of course, so if Apopka wins tonight, Wekiva would be going into Apopka, and they'd be playing not only a team that's 8-1, not only a team that is in the top 4 in their classification and region, because of their not because they won the district, but because they are legitimately have a higher RPI total of points than any of the other teams. Again, that would go back to where we started as far as Wekiva not really falling any in the minimum damage, because they would be playing a team that has maximum points. So even if they do lose, it wouldn't be a big hit. There's a big difference between losing to a team like, say, South Lake. They didn't, but if Wekiva had, losing to a team that's 3-5 is far more damaging than a team that's 8-1.
Sure, which is exactly why the 2 losses that the Mustangs do have on their record against Edgewater and Dr. Phillips have been relatively light damage statistically.
That's one of the 2 reasons that even though they lost the 2 games in a row, they didn't take a tremendous tumble in the RPI standings. They at least were able to solidify themselves in the middle of the standings, along with the fact that they opened up the season with victories against West Orange and Winter Park, who are going to most likely get into the 8A postseason tournament.
Right, and speaking of that, if you're wondering why you didn't see Apopka anywhere on this chart, it's because for the first time in, 6 years, Apopka and Wekiva are not in the same classification. Wekiva... Correct. Wekiva started its life as a 7A school and then went up to 8A in the next reclassification, stayed there for 6 years, and now has been bumped back down to 7A. That is not a reflection of the quality of the program. It has nothing to do with that. It is strictly a function of enrollment.
Student population.
Exactly. So every 2 years, the FHSAA revises the classifications based on enrollment from fall of the previous year. And Wekiva hovers right around 2,100 students. And 2,100 and change is the break point. I don't remember what the exact figure is, but it's in the 2100s, is the break point between the second highest classification and the highest classification in most of the major sports, including football. So Apopka, which is well above that threshold, you can pretty much count on them being 8A forever as long as we have 8 classifications until we build yet another Apopka Relief High School. Wekiva, on the other hand, is going to toe that line. So every time reclassifications come up, you're going to see Wekiva be very close to either the very large side of 7A or the very small side of 8A. So that's why you don't see Apopka on this chart at all, because as far as the postseason is concerned, Wekiva doesn't care about Apopka. It is irrelevant other than the fact that it's a game toward RPI, but Apopka is not a potential game that we would ever play in the postseason anymore. Neither is Dr. Phillips, and frankly, neither are most of the Orange County Public Schools other than Edgewater, which is just very slightly smaller than Wekiva.
Yeah. The other thing to point out here, too, you're talking about the quality, even though Wekiva moved to 7A this year, they still played 6 8A teams, and they're 3-2 against them.
Yeah, and that's pretty...
2-2 against the teams that are going to be in their playoffs.
Yeah, that's pretty common when you talk about Orange County Public Schools. Wekiva, Edgewater, and Jones being the 3 notable ones that are a little bit smaller. Most Orange County Public Schools fall into the 8A category by default, because you have to remember that Orange County is a very densely populated area relative to the rest of the state. So when the FHSAA does their classifications, they're not looking at relative school sizes within Orange County. They're looking at relative school sizes at places like Niceville and Crestview and Pensacola and...
Rural.
Right, and so most of the schools in Orange County fall well past the 8A threshold. Wekiva is one of the few that doesn't, Edgewater and Jones being the other 2 that pop into my head. But that is pretty typical because you still have a Metro schedule that you want to play. The Metro Conference results don't have any bearing on the playoffs whatsoever. It's really just for bragging rights. But nevertheless, all of the Orange County Public Schools, all 20 of them by definition, participate in the Orlando Metro Conference, 10 of them in the Eastern Division, 10 of them in the Western Division. And so you're just, again, playing for bragging rights there. So you do see that even among the schools that are technically below the threshold to be labeled as 8A, they play a lot of 8A schools for the simple reason that they want to play a lot of other Orange County Public Schools and get those Metro games in.
Right, and it's also
It's a rivalry.
It's also a logistic issue too.
Sure, you also have much shorter bus trips for that, unlike tonight where this may be, I'm trying to think, Forest came from Ocala, Southlake comes from Groveland. Neither one of those are particularly short trips, so Southlake is going to have a late night tonight getting home.
Yeah, and the other thing, though, too, is you want to play the Metro Conference. That goes back to what you were talking about. Other than Edgewater, Jones, and Wekiva, they're all in 8A because of the densely populated nature of Orange County and Orlando. The theory is, and again, it applies to anything in life, you know, if you can go out and at least go 500 against 8A teams, then you got a realistic shot of going into the playoffs in 7A and at least being able to provide a challenge to your opponent.
Yeah, it is ironic, though, that Wekiva kind of went out of the frying pan and into the fire, where they were previously, they had the misfortune of being in the same district as Apopka and to a lesser extent West Orange, when those were two of the premier programs and perennial playoff contenders in the state.
Even further back again, where we started 2 hours ago talking about East Ridge under Bud O'Hara, they were in the district too for a while.
Sure, and then so Wekiva had the misfortune, regardless of whether we were under the old playoff system where the champion and the runner-up qualified or the new playoff system where it's done by points, Wekiva had the misfortune of being neighbors to one of the best teams in the state, and so that made it difficult to even get into the playoffs in the first place, whereas other schools might have, by geographic luck, managed to avoid playing schools like Apopka until the state tournament, state semifinals or state championships. Now, Wekiva has been reclassified to 7A and has the misfortune of being geographically neighbors to another of the top teams in the state in any classification, which is Edgewater.
Yeah, and of course, they got a number of D1 prospects, and not just D1 prospects, but Power 5 conferences. The top half teams like Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State come to mind. Florida, who's now coming back, LSU. But the other thing is looking at.
I think we got to look ahead to next week.
I was going to say, you and I, Mark, of course, we've been covering it, and I guess say indirectly have been at least we don't actually teach here at the school, although I am a substitute and I do some other support work for the teachers. But we're one of the few handful of people who are still around since the school started.
Sure, and we've seen that rivalry between Wekiva and Apopka and many of the other Orange County public schools grow over the years. We saw it be very lopsided at first, and now we've seen Wekiva be competitive, to strongly competitive in the last several years.
And taking it to a more overall picture, during that time that the rivalries were lopsided, we weren't talking about playoffs. We were just happy winning a couple of games. Now
sure.
Talking about 4 in a row and being disappointed, dropping down to the 5th seed. So, you know, just a reminder to keep that in perspective. Sure,
and I think that as Coach Bedesem, I'm sure, no doubt, is coaching the players right now in the locker rooms, let's not get ahead of ourselves too much. We know that it is very likely that Wekiva will be in the playoffs in 2 weeks, somewhere between 5 and 8 seed, which means that they will be on the road. But before that, we have a game to play next week. And the truth is, the game that we have next week may not statistically have a ton of impact on where we end up in the play for either team. But it's still an important game because it is Wekiva versus Apopka, and Wekiva versus Apopka is always a big game for student morale, for school spirit, for the sake of the rivalry, for the crosstown Apopka, the Mayor's Cup. We'll have the mayor there next week to present the trophy. Yep, and so that's always a major event, and we hope that you'll join us in person at Apopka High School.
I'd say it's also an opportunity, too, for both teams, again, you're going to get momentum from winning, some confidence, but it's also a measuring stick. It's an opportunity to really see what you can do as far as playing, put together a game plan, strategy, and tactics.
Oh, yeah, and certainly for confidence, if you can go in there and beat a Popka, a program as good as they are, then that makes you feel a lot better about maybe having to face Edgewater again in the first couple rounds of the playoffs. That if you can beat high caliber teams, because that really is the only place the Mustangs have stumbled this year, is when they've played teams that just don't allow you to get away with any mistakes,
Yeah.
and we make mistakes anyway.
And
That's the only place Wekiva stumbled this year. So if we could end the season on a win against the Blue Darters, that says a lot about what the team is capable of and what their confidence level would be going into some of those potentially more challenging scenarios that we might have in the playoffs.
I think Coach Bettison put it best, the quote that he gave me. They played Edgewater and they played Dr. Phillip. He said against the other teams, they've won those 7 games. We have the skill and talent to overcome making those mistakes, which can turn into a big play and change the direction of the game. In other words, they were able to minimize the ability of the opponent turning those big mistakes into a big play. Like they make a mistake during the play, and next thing you know, either the ball's inside that red zone and the opponent's threatening, or they actually score. They could not, against Dr. Phillips and Edgewater, those mistakes during what became the big plays were turned into big plays. So now you go and you play your third team. It's an opportunity, and this is why I say it's more than just the intangibles of confidence, momentum, bragging rights among Popka. It's also a tangible ability to be able to develop a strategy, a game plan, and be able to become a better team tangibly, because now it's your third opportunity. You've had your first 2. You can look at the film and learn from your mistakes, and you've had 4 weeks to work on that. Go out and practice with that specific purpose.
Yep. So we'll leave it there. We'll put the graphic back up one more time as we leave you tonight. Again, this is unofficial, and this does not include tonight's results, but this would be if the season had ended prior to tonight. This is what the playoff brackets would look like, and so at least gives you a sense. These things might move around a little bit, but these are the 8 teams that are most in the hunt at this point for 7A Region 1. So we hope that we will see you in person next week at Apopka. Again, that's a 7 o'clock kickoff. I have not heard this for a fact, but I assume that it will be their senior night as well, because it is by definition their last home game of the year since it's week 11. So that would precede the game just like it did for us tonight, and then kickoff will be at 7 o'clock. Again, we hope you'll join us in person. If you are not able to join us in person, we will not be carrying that full game live, although I believe WBZW will carry it on the radio. But we will break in pregame, halftime, and postgame as we always do, and we'll provide live stats on WekivaMustangs.com as well as live Twitter updates. So my thanks to Neil Fisher from the Apopka Chief, joining me tonight and each week to cover our Mustang athletics. My name is Mark Barchi, the voice of the Mustangs, wishing you a good night and a great weekend.